What's up, nerds? Welcome to another edition of Them Nerds. Tony over here, Jerry over there. We are here to talk to you today about something very big in the Marvel Universe and that could be very big in the Marvel Cinematic Universe coming up. But first, before we forget, we are doing a giveaway for this Wanda Funko Pop. It's going to happen soon. We've been getting a decent amount of interaction. We're going to be giving it away very soon. So anyway, the thing we're going to talk to you about today is the House of M. The House of M was a massive comic event centered primarily around Wanda Maximoff. Jerry, give us a quick little history lesson on the House of M.
Okay, so basically what it comes down to is Wanda, who has had a mental breakdown. Her powers are kind of going out of control. She's killed, a couple members of the Avengers, Hawkeye being one of them, and which just caused her to completely just become a mental case. So Magneto goes to his best friend Charles Xavier and asks, basically save his daughter. And Charles works with her, and throughout the course of the comic book, or the first couple of issues, you see Charles basically walking her through it, and he kind of keeps her on track. But as she starts breaking, he tells her to stop. And it is what causes her to stop, changing making an alternative universe, basically.
Right.
Making these changes that can drastically change everything. And so at some point, Professor X decides there's just no stopping this. This has gone too far. It's even gone too far. Past the point that I can even help. So he calls together a committee of, the world's mightiest heroes. And they come up with this idea that Wanda must die. And although, throughout the course of the comic books, Magneto has never really had a close bond with his children. In the very beginning, they were just pawns of his, villainous group. And throughout the course of the comic books altogether, at times they're friends, at times they're foes, and they're, this is one family. He realizes the best thing that happened is that she must die. Yet Quicksilver has an issue with this and decides that he can't let his sister die. This is his best friend, the only person in the world that understands him. And so he tells her the plan. So Professor X gets the group together, and he basically tells them, we have to kill her, and they all agree. They go to Genosha, where Wanda is being housed, and as they enter the building to go in to kill Wanda, they can't find her anywhere, and they're trying to figure out where she's at. And then they just see a bright light. And basically in the comic books, Wolverine wakes up in a bed next to his lover, which is Mystique. And he's, basically he's freaked out, like, why am I here? And yet Mystique has a whole different idea of what's going on. And she's talking about, what's going on in Genosha and in the world, and talking about, Emperor Magnus and everything else. Yet Wolverine still remembers everything from the past life. Yeah. And so throughout the course of it, Wolverine jumps out of off of one of the SHIELD spaceships that are flying, our hovercrafts, plummeting to Earth. And he is captured by Luke Cage and a group of basically resistors. Yeah. And he informs them about how that he's from a planet or a world where none of this happens. The human beings are the dominant race. Right. They're the minority. They, this is not the way the world goes.
Because in House of M, mutants, Homo superior rules Earth. Yes. And Homo sapiens, human beings, are considered like a inferior race. They're subjugated. And so Luke Cage leads this resistance that is trying to, keep humans from being,
Yeah, and he tells Luke Cage, you're not going to believe this story anyways, and he says, I actually do believe you, because this little girl just showed up 2 days beforehand and she told me the same story. And yep. So they go on this basically a mission to inform other people of what's going on, letting them know this world does not exist. So the first place they go to is the home of Cyclops and Emma Frost, also known as the White Queen, and who are married and together. And they're waiting for him. And as Emma walks in, she freezes the whole room. But because of her telepathic power, she's able to read Wolverine's brain. And as she does, she realizes that this world isn't right. So you start seeing glimpses of people as they realize what's going on. They know what they need to do.
Right.
So throughout the course of this one, or of this new world, they make the decision that they also need to go find out what Magneto, which is what they assumed happened. Magneto turned on them all, had Wanda make this Earth where he's the leader.
Of course.
And he goes into they go to go capture him and find out what's going on, but they can't find him. Right. Also in this, the only other person they could think of that could help is Professor X, which they then find out actually is dead in this world.
Right.
So they go to Genosha and they are looking for Wanda. They can't find her anywhere. And they find out that actually the way that Wanda found out what was going to happen was because Quicksilver let her know that they were coming to kill her. And so Magneto throws like a major fit. Basically, he goes crazy because of this idea that you've done this in my name without letting us know what's going on. And so he's going crazy about it. Hawkeye, who's alive still in this world, ends up shooting Wanda in the back, and he's yelling at her, why would you question why I would do this? Because Wanda's like, why would you do this with me? Why would you do this to me? And he's basically saying, you killed me with having no issue. Why would you think I wouldn't do that? And so as Wanda's laying there, and Magneto comes up to Wanda as he's yelling at her and everything else. She says, no more. And then she looks at him and says, no more mutants. And as she does that, the world starts disintegrating, and we're back into the present day. But when they get back to the present day, they realize that when she said no more mutants, she literally meant no more mutants. Right. That the Avengers think that they're back to normal. Everything's back, fine. We're back into our real world. And they get this phone call from the X Mansion where they find out a large portion of their school, all these students have lost their powers. There's people who are flying when the powers are taken away from them, they just plummet to the earth. And it all comes down to Wanda and her wish and leaving a population of millions down to just thousands. And one of the biggest things about what came from House of M is that it was really our first big story, like within the comic books. Like there's been the Dark Phoenix saga and Secret Wars and all this other stuff. These were big things, but these were 20, 40 years ago. This House of M is what actually started the big arcs of stories back in Marvel. Directly related to House of M became a comic book about the Messiah, which was Hope Summers, where basically the thousands of mutants dropped down to just 300.
Right.
And so she comes into it. She's the first mutant born after No More Mutants. And so it's this idea of keeping her protected. X-Men versus Avengers happened after that. You had Civil War happened after that. All this stuff relates to House of M and how big and powerful mutants actually are and how we have to keep them controlled and how it goes throughout the course of the comic books, even up till today.
Right. And the thing that is so kind of exciting to me, at least, about this whole, House of M and establishing the idea that mutants are like ridiculously powerful, especially a handful of them. It reminds me of the old X-Men cartoon that we used to watch, where the whole world was like debating, like, these mutants are they have to be controlled. We have to look after them. We have, and it reminds me of that introduction to the idea of mutants being feared. And it's kind of a throwback to that. So that's pretty much the gist of House of M. Some pretty cool little nuggets that happened during House of M that I thought were kind of funny. Spider-Man was a celebrity. A lot of people thought he was a mutant, so he had a higher status, right? Captain America was old.
Yeah, Captain America never fell into the ice. Right. So it's basically whatever you ever wished for throughout the course of your life, up till Wanda said that's what came true for you. So, Captain America's biggest regret was sitting, 40 years in the ice. And so here he is, and he never went in there. And so he's a very old man by the time this comes around. Right.
Now, part of our mission here with you guys today was to just kind of bring House of M back up. I think we're going to do some more on House of M later on, but the other half of what we want to do is kind of tie that into what's going on in the MCU, especially with the events of WandaVision. With Wanda playing such a pivotal role in this whole House of M thing, and the idea that WandaVision is kind of tracking her mental break, and we see some of the similar elements. The twins, and so forth, things that were also tied to her breakdown that led to House of M. There are a few things that I find interesting. We just mentioned Captain America. He's not related in WandaVision in any way, but there's been a lot of rumors that I always get all these Chris's confused. Evans?
Yeah.
Chris Evans is going to come back and play Steve Rogers in some capacity. And as I was kind of like going back over the rundown of House of M, and I saw that he was an old guy, and it reminded me of, he played an old guy at the end of Endgame. It makes me wonder if he's going to make another reappearance in his old man form, either tied to, Wanda doing this, or maybe just, he's still old from the end of Endgame. I don't know, but anyway,
Yeah.
that's a tangent. I just went down a side road and made a U-turn.
No, I think that's exactly what, I think that we have to play this idea that the storyline of House of M has to be adapted. I don't know if this is the exact House of M storyline. I have a feeling this is a prequel to House of M. So this is what causes her to maybe make that last statement at the very end of it, where instead of erasing mutants from the world, she brings them into the world.
Right.
So, you have this superpowered woman who's really the most powerful, as far as we know right now, person on the planet. Nobody else has these powers like she has.
Right.
And now she's being hunted by several different organizations. The best way you can protect yourself is creating other people who are like you.
Right.
So, I think that, especially with this idea that, the House of M is a creation of her constant loss, the loss of her children, the loss of her husband, the loss of her brother, the loss, it just piles on, people she kills herself. It's all this weight on her, which causes her to break. And I think that's what we're seeing here.
Right. And, we have all these different possibilities that are, coming out from House of M. And I think it's indicative of what Marvel Studios has done with Marvel Comics content. We got Civil War on the big screen. It wasn't Civil War from the comics.
No.
We got, this is not from the MCU, but we got, Dark Phoenix a couple times, allegedly, and it wasn't a Dark Phoenix from the comics. We've gotten several of the big arcs. We're going to get Secret Invasion on Disney Plus. It ain't going to be Secret Invasion from the comic books.
Yeah.
Marvel Studios is doing a very smart thing. They're taking the assets they have, they're building new assets, and they're using these familiar names, familiar storylines, and familiar overarching ideas like House of M to make the most of what they have and to introduce the things they want to introduce in the way they want to introduce them.
Yeah, exactly.
So like you said, I don't think we're going to get House of M like in the comics, but I could see them using the idea of House of M to reintroduce Quicksilver, to introduce Magneto, and to kind of build upon this idea that Wanda is ridiculously powerful and that she can reshape reality at will. And again, we've talked about this. It could be a way to bring Charles Xavier into the fold. There are so many things they can do using like the House of M name to introduce other aspects, like kind of like how they use the name Fantastic Four on that Abomination that they put out a few years ago. That wasn't the Fantastic Four, not really, but they called it that. So I think that they're going to utilize the power behind that name, House of M, and you're going to get comic book fans being like, what's that now? And then you're going to get casual fans being like, oh, what's House of M? Well, where are they going to go to find out? They're going to go back and read the comics, and they're going to start getting more involved in the comics. I think it's a smart, creative model.
Back of everybody. Everybody gets their back scratched.
It's a smart creative model, and it's a smart business model for Marvel as an umbrella company, but especially for Marvel Studios to get the rub, in wrestling terms. They're getting the rub from the names of the comic books.
Yeah, I think that had Marvel had control over all the characters 20 years ago when the MCU started, we would be seeing a totally different kind of movies that are coming out, But because they've already completed a lot of the big storylines that have happened within the Marvel universe, now they're kind of into play catch up with where we are today. So I could see something happening where Scarlet Witch at the very end of this, the world's starting to break down and everything else. She's obviously aware of what's going on, and she uses that same power to maybe change the universe altogether. And that's the reason why you have, Into the Multiverse of Madness coming along. We know that the Ant-Man versus the Wasp is happening. Why you have also characters that are being recasted or you've already seen them just in a movie beforehand, where you got a new Cassidy Long that's has been cast from Endgame to now the new Ant-Man and the Wasp. Because there's variants of these same characters throughout the whole thing. And what happens when you use your powers to create this whole big universe and it collapses, you're going to have new alternative characters stuck on this planet. I'm guessing that's what we're looking at. I think that we're going to, at the very end, I would not be surprised, because we, obviously we've had Elizabeth Olsen say that there is a Luke Skywalker, equivalent to the end of this series, that we see either Professor X or Magneto at the very end of this. And that's the straw that breaks the camel's back. And you see a glimpse of the No More Mutant scene, but it causes something totally different.
Right. Yeah. And I see this as a perfect way for Marvel to do kind of not a reboot, but to have a really easy way to fold in a lot of these properties that they have tried elsewhere and have been eliminated for whatever reason. I just saw a fan poster for Multiverse of Madness that had Doctor Strange and Wanda, and then in the other corner was Nico Minoru from the Runaways. And it made me just think, it made me so sad that the Runaways isn't there anymore. And so hopeful that it's going to be coming back. And I have seen that they're really promoting the new Runaways comic book series. So that makes me think, we've talked about this before, what you see in the comics, you can kind of think, well, they're probably going to be doing that on screen. So it'd be a perfect way to bring in the Runaways, Fantastic Four, mutants, of course, and the Netflix characters that need to be brought back in some fashion.
What I would love to see happen is, bring in a character from the Fox universe, right? Somebody big, though, that would have a direct connection to Wanda. Have them explain to her this other world that is just like hers, and you're selling this story. And when you're looking at her in the recent trailers that have come out, we noticed that Wanda is starting to have a breakdown. She's talking about I'm just having a case of the Mondays, the whole place is tore apart around her and everything else. It looks a mess, and it would be a perfect time just for somebody to come in there and kind of manipulate in her ear, put in her ear an idea of, but you have the power to bring us all back, so why don't you go ahead and do that? And maybe we don't get the same exact characters from the Fox, but it's the characters and the names that we know who they are.
Right. Well, that's a great reason for Evan Peters to be on this show.
Yeah, exactly.
Brother.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
We'll see. We'll see. I think that there are so many ways that they could go. And knowing that Elizabeth Olsen has made that comment about we're going to have a, oh my God kind of moment, Luke Skywalker on Mandalorian kind of moment. Who knows? Seriously, we've talked about, the possibility of Professor X. We've talked about Magneto. There's the two Quicksilvers that are going to be around. And Marvel, who knows? Marvel could end up throwing us Doctor Doom. She has a connection to Doctor Doom as well.
Yes.
I don't know what they're going to do.
I think that, what would be crazy is just that, we know that Marvel approached Patrick Stewart about revising his role as Professor X, and that he just basically said, had I not, felt like I really gave an ending to my character in Logan, I would have came back. But the person who hasn't got a complete ending yet is Ian McKellen. I'm pretty sure I butchered that, but you know who I'm talking about. Magneto from the original X-Men series. To have him walk into that room and, basically give the same kind of spiel, like when he's talking to Jean Grey and when she's crazy and all these other people that he's, manipulated when he realizes that they're vulnerable, and just talking to, and saying this, you can just, with a snap of your finger, you can bring us all here. And then that's how we get him. I mean, we all know that they have to be bringing us mutants from this show. There would be a complete waste if they didn't do that.
Right.
So this has to be the way that they're going.
Right. And you mentioned a snap. I think that would actually be a really cool way to phrase it, because I think that could be the little trigger in her mind that really is the final straw that breaks her, thinking about the snap from Infinity War and Endgame. what I think would be kind of cool, I would love to see Ian McKellen play this role one last time. And it would be kind of cool for him to be like, I've lived my life. I'm at the end, but you could fix it. You could make it better, whatever. And then and then that would lead us to another person who plays Magneto in the long run.
Yes.
Looking at you, Michael Fassbender. I think it would be great to come back as that. But I think you're right. There has to be mutants.
Yeah.
All the mutants.
They really wasted our time.
Right. It's a good show.
Yeah, it was a great show, but I'm going to be disappointed.
Yes, definitely. Well, I tell you what, we are going to be watching WandaVision very closely. The next few episodes are going to be bonkers, and we'll be bringing you all of our inane ramblings, all of our wild speculation, and all of our lifetime worth of comic book wisdom very soon. What do you think is going on in WandaVision? How do you feel like it ties into House of M? Let us know in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and follow us on social media at We Them Nerds on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. And I think that's it from us today. We will see you guys very soon. Be good. Be good to each other. Bye.
Later.